We would have loved to have Ben here, and he's promised me he'll come next year. This year, this personal tragedy prevented him from making this trip, but I think they stood in magnificently, so another round of applause for our funny men. And from the funny men, we go into our next session, which is Manto and I. Nondita Das discusses her journey with Sadat Hassan Manto from reel to book, and she will be in conversation with Niranjan Iyengar. Before we start the session, I'd like to invite Nondita, Niranjan, and Amitav on stage because we'll do a little launch here before starting the session. Yes, so we'll kind of make it a photo op with the 3 books. The copies are just behind you. They've been, typically story wraps them in such a fierce manner. The books have gone back. We just wanted him to just hold it. This is when the author turns organizer, never a good idea. He was supposed to just remove it, Nondita. He was supposed to have taken it out. Anyway, this is when authors should not be organizers.
No, but I did want the plastic to be on it.
Yes. Well, that you have to talk to your publisher about. So here you are, the book Manto and I, a beautifully produced, wonderfully evocative story about how a director finds her topic and then can't let go perhaps, or doesn't want to let go perhaps. That's what the session is about. I'd request Amitav to just say a few words about Nondita, Manto, and perhaps the book.
Well, let me say that it's both a pleasure and a privilege to be here releasing this beautiful book. It's just so incredibly well produced. Well, we all know Manto is, one of the great writers of the subcontinent, one of the greatest 20th century writers of the world, I would say. We all love his stories. And I really can't think of anyone who could do justice to him in the way that Nandita has. She's become such an important figure for all of us. She's spearheaded so many important movements. She's always at the forefront of every kind of struggle. So congratulations, Nandita, on this very, very beautiful book.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Nandita. So let's just dive straight into it.
Yes, I was here 1 year ago with Manto. Some of you, I recognize some faces. And that time I spoke about the film, and it feels strange that a year later I'm speaking about the book. This man, this idea, this writer doesn't seem to be leaving me, so here I am.
Yeah, in fact, my first question was about that. Like, when you were making the film, you researched for 4 years. You wrote and directed the film for 2 years and produced it as well, put it together 6 years. And then normally what happens with a filmmaker and a writer is that once you put in so much into a subject matter, you are sort of through with it, or at least if you're not through with it, you're exhausted with the experience and you want to take a break from it. But it doesn't seem so in your case, because you have continued that journey with this book and the influence that Manto has had on you, plus the experience of making the film and how it sort of came together. So what is it about Manto, would you say, that doesn't leave you, or that you don't leave him?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, Manto is not just the man or the writer. For me, it denotes a certain idea that I think that I also hold dear, which is that he's trying to invoke a certain sense of humanity through his works. There's no real difference between his life and in works. It's not like a profession and career, the kind of words we use today. So in many ways, his writings, his own thoughts, and you know his thoughts through the essays. I mean, there's so few people who are alive today who actually could tell me about Manto, even during my research. Maybe just about his sister-in-law who really saw him and his family. But otherwise, most of it was through his own writings. He was very prolific. He wrote about 300 short stories, hundreds of essays, biographical sketches. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. You read, and then you slowly start putting things together, and you get a sense of the man and the times. So for me, it wasn't like you don't leave your basic values, you don't leave your basic concerns, the angst that I've felt for the longest time about how we are becoming so prejudiced as a nation, as the world, like how we are discriminating on the basis of religion and caste and gender and sexual preference, color of your skin, name it, and we are finding ways to divide ourselves. And that is something that is there thematically in most of his writings, and that concern is there throughout his work. And I think that's why it just cannot leave you. I mean, now I will move on to other projects. In some ways, with this book, my journey feels more complete because I've shared all the stories that you don't see on screen, but you are kind of curious about. Like, why did you choose to shoot Lahore in Gujarat, of all places? The irony of it. But, and how did you find those locations? How do you even create Bombay in today's modern day clutter with satellite dishes and air conditions jutting out? Or, why Nawaz? And how do you get the other cast? Why would Javed Akhtar, who's never acted, why did he choose to act in this? And there are many stories in it about the whole journey. And not just the creative journey, but also my own socio-political engagement, my emotional journey. What is it to be a mother and be doing a film like this, and which takes so much of yourself. So it was of course very cathartic for me to write the book, but I hope it was not just that. It's a true sharing of everything that I've cared about in these 6 years. So while I will continue to do other stories, I think the Mantoyat, जिसको मैं कहती हूँ काफ़ी बार, Mantoyat is the Manto-ness in all of us. I want to believe that all of us, want to be more free-spirited. We want to be more truthful, want to be more courageous. And I think that, in some sense, will probably never leave me. And I hope it doesn't.
I hope so too. What I wanted to ask you is that, when you have a little distance from the work that you've made, you've written, you've directed, you've released it, you've spoken about it extensively. It's been extremely well received critically by the audiences. People loved the film. And now you've got a little bit of a distance from the film. And you just happened to mention to me, like all creative artists, we tend to get critical of our work. So if I had to ask you if there's one thing that you would have done differently with your film Manto, what would it be?
Actually, many. That's why I don't watch it again. I've seen it so many times, during editing and sound and subtitle and music. There's so much that goes into it. When I saw it in Cannes with my cast and crew at the premiere, I don't think I've seen the film again because I'm almost scared to see it because I would say, oh, I should have done that and I should have done that. But that, I think, is part of it. If we were so sure and if everything was right, you wouldn't do another work of art. So I think, I don't know if there's... I do feel that a lot of us, especially those of us who are doing independent films, we somehow manage to make the film. But we still don't know how to market it and how to distribute it. And we are not meant to know. But in today's times, it is also becoming important because finally I'm not making a film to be indulgent. And, of course, you want to make it because you really want to tell this story. But you also want to make it because you want to reach out. You want to communicate. You want to share. You want to, stir something, even if it is that small. So it does become important as to how do you find ways in kind of positioning it and marketing it. And I wish I knew a little more of that to be able to reach out.
And would you say this experience has taught you a little bit more about it, and probably in your next project you might be able to put that to use?
Well, when I did Firak, I thought I had wisened up, and then when I did Manto, I realized I hadn't. Because, things also change. Now there's social media and, that game keeps changing. But because I'm not really a trained filmmaker, I've never gone to a film school, or I've never, assisted anybody. I don't even watch that many films. In some sense, it also frees me from the grammar of making it. When you know too much, you feel, oh, is this right? Should there be a clear first act and a second act? Like sometimes people ask me these very theoretical, cinematic sort of questions that deal with the grammar of it, and sometimes I really don't know. And that's why, in that sense, I would say that I don't know whether I would do something differently. It would be a different film then. I mean, Manto could have been a 100-part series as well. There's so much to share, so much to tell. And even when I was writing it, the reason it took me 4 or 5 years is not just the research, but what to keep and what to let go. I mean, that becomes really tough when you have so much and you kind of love all of it almost. And you're telling an audience which largely doesn't know Manto. And then there are some Manto experts who today know so much more than even I do, even having spent all this time, but they know every little bit. They are like genuine Manto, sort of, true experts of that. And then there are those in the middle, the most dangerous ones, who have half-baked knowledge, who think they know more than they actually do, if I may say so. And, their questions are always the strangest. But then you are reaching out to, you're not judging them. You're not judging the person who doesn't know anything, and also those who have this half-baked knowledge. So how do you make a film about someone who is so revered and who is so unknown all at the same time? Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to reach out. So I think writing for me definitely was the toughest aspect of making the film.
You just mentioned right now while talking that to reach out, you wanted to tell Manto's story the way you sort of realized him, to share it with as many people as possible. And I come to a very interesting, we are at a very interesting juncture in sort of filmmaking right now, where there are a lot of films that are being made about historical characters or characters from the past, from mythological, historical. And there is a tendency among filmmakers, especially, to sort of, just whitewash, probably, maybe it's a harsh word, but to whitewash the flaws and just to sort of glamorize the good parts of them. Whereas in Manto, I found that was not the case at all. I mean, it was true to his character. They were all warts and moles. He was full of flaws, and yet he was extremely endearing. So, do you really believe that? I mean, there's a clear demarcation between filmmakers who feel that if you want to approach a subject which is complex, or a character that is complex, then you need to simplify it for a larger audience to sort of watch it. And you clearly veered away from that while making Manto.
But those are also the pressures of more mainstream cinema. By very definition, mainstream means you're trying to please a lot of people. You're trying to get a lot of people to understand. So the nuances do get lost because you can't layer it so much. In 2 hours, you are telling a story of a man who was complex. And you want to and therefore in films we say, okay, this is the hero, this is the villain, and the gray areas are not explored enough because you feel people won't understand. We often undermine also the intelligence of the audience, that they will not be able to understand. So, and to bring in, Manto was full of contradictions, as you and I are. Like someone who had so much moral courage, but was also scared of going to the jail. Someone who deeply cared for his family, his wife, his children, but he was so compelled to tell the truth that every time he would tell the truth, he knew his family would be, their well-being would get jeopardized. But that is a genuine dilemma. And we have Professor Shugato Bose here, who's a historian, so I'm sure he would be appalled if we confuse mythology with history. They are two different things, you would agree? In fact, he and Aisha Jalal were one of the first people with whom I went for a Manto walk. They were going for a Manto walk in Bombay, and I kind of tagged along, and we saw all those parts, so that it's all in the book, so please do read it. So I think mythology is a different thing. It's an interpretation, it's a story, it's written by human beings. That's a whole different thing. But when you're dealing with something that's historical, I think there's a great responsibility in depicting as honestly as possible. Of course, it's a work of fiction. There will be some liberties taken. I have also taken liberties despite all my research and all of that. For instance, what did Manto and Safia speak in their bedroom? There's no way of knowing that. You know, there's a scene in the film where I show Manto on the day that he hears the news of Gandhi being killed. I don't know how he reacted. But when you begin to know the person, or you think you know the person deeply enough, you can kind of extrapolate from that and say, okay, maybe this is the kind of reaction he would have had. And those liberties, I guess, you have to take. I mean, I remember for the first screening, I had brought the Manto daughters to Bombay to see the film, and I was wondering what they would say, especially about their mother's character, because there was, you know, less written about the mother. And every time I would ask them, and everyone would say, oh, you know, Safia was such an amazing person. She was the most soft-spoken, gentle, supportive, generous, simple. And I was like, that sounds wonderful, but it neither makes for a good, interesting character, and nor could she have only been that. I'm sure she had certain dilemmas and angst and pain and anguish inside. So in some ways, I tried to articulate those feelings. I maybe gave words to those feelings, whether they came out or not, but I felt this would be in line with what she must have felt. And I was really very happy that the daughters, when they saw the film, they were very moved by the way the mother was portrayed. And Rasika Duggal, who played the mother's character, was also absolutely amazing. So it's really about the intent. It's very difficult to say. I can't say I can take the liberty, but you can't, right? If we have to agree whether how much liberty should we be taking, and who's going to be the judge of those liberties that are taken. But I would say it's a lot to do with the intent and how much you're ready to put into what is your intent. Is your intent to show it as is, or do you have another agenda that you're trying to convey through this film? And that's why we see a lot of propaganda films, we see a lot of jingoistic films that are coming out that are distorting history. And that's I think, truly sad, because sometimes people take it as history. And that's kind of dangerous, because you know, we as commoners, we wouldn't know what really happened at that time. And you are saying this is based on a true story, or this is historical, then I think it's a grave injustice.
Going a little back to the writing of the film, there's something that was really interesting about the way you crafted the film, was that you integrated his stories with his life. And that was really a very unique way of telling Manto's story. So I wanted to ask you whether that was very organic to the writing, or was it a very well thought out sort of a idea which you decided to so that you could get both sides of him, his literary side as well as his life?
No, I think it was not only organic, it was almost instinctive. In the sense, when I started thinking about doing a film on Manto, I felt I couldn't separate him from his writings, because you know, we often think of life and work, and we think of them as separate silos, but sometimes they are very deeply, they are one. Your work is an extension of your life and your values and what you care about, and that was definitely true of Manto. Even in his stories, sometimes you don't know, the line between fact and fiction are so blurred, you don't know whether he actually met this person, or is it something he imagined, if this is a character that he created. So right from the beginning, I knew I wanted to weave in his stories. And in fact, I begin the film, some of you who may have seen it, I begin the film with a story and almost bookend it with another story. And these stories, the selection was tough, because he'd written so many stories. And how do you select? And yes, these are some of my favorite stories, but there were others too. But these stories kind of take forward the narrative, and they're not just sort of inserted in between, but they actually move the narrative forward. And that's why these stories were chosen.
Very interesting choice of stories, but also in one of your interviews you mentioned that there's so much of his writing that is not accessible even today. Like there's a lot of stuff that has not been translated either into Devanagari or into English at all.
Not good translations,
good translations. So I wanted to ask you, now that you've been seeped into his life and his works for so long, if you had to suggest a way for people to access that part of Manto's work, which is not accessible, and sort of translate it into whether it is short films or films? How would you say they should
But
approach
the
it?
translations are still there. I think it's still a great way to enter his world. And then, those of you who know Devanagari, it's available. There's a 5-volume of his works with his essays and his radio plays and his biographical sketches, his stories. It's called Dastavez. It's brought out by Rajkamal Publications. There are a lot of other people who are doing his translation as we speak. There are other books that have been written about him. There's a book of essays that Akar Patel did called Why I Write. There's Pity of Partition that Aisha Jalal did about his life. There's a centenary book. Unfortunately, I don't think it's available in India, is it? The centenary book that Aisha Jalal and Manto's daughter, Nusrat Jalal, did. It's a beautiful book because it's half in English and half in Urdu. And it's just a beautifully brought out book, but I hope it's going to be available in India as well. I brought it from Lahore. So there are, I think the one good thing that has happened is that also because of the film, a lot more people are now talking about it, are reading. I keep meeting people who have, sort of said, oh, we discovered Manto. So that, thank God for that. And a lot of publishers are very happy because they're saying our sales of Manto books have gone up. And there is an anthology very extensive anthology of Manto's writings that is coming out very soon. So I think it is going to be far more accessible. He's also translated in many languages. I went to Japan in last July, and I was amazed how there were these Urdu professors, and they are translating into Japanese, and there are big Manto fans in Japan, and there are little books, very beautifully brought out, single story books, a short story, you can imagine, like 30-page, beautifully brought out short books that are available in France in French. And I hope it'll also be translated in other Indian languages. So we'll have to make a little bit of effort if you want to read someone special, but I think it'll be well worth it.
You speak a lot about the Mantoiyat and the Mantoness in all of us, and clearly his works have influenced you a lot. So if I had to ask you, how should one encourage the Mantoiyat in society, especially today, because he's so much more relevant today than perhaps he was at that time. How would you say it would be? How would you facilitate that for him to reach out to a lot more people?
When I say Mantoiyat, I almost mean that spirit that I talked about, about being more courageous, more honest, more free-spirited. And I want to believe that all of us do have it. Because we do envy when someone says something truthfully and we feel like, oh, I couldn't have said it so bluntly. Or someone when stands up and, speaks up for all of us. And there are so many Mantos today, right? Manto, that's why I've dedicated the book also to the Mantos of the world. Because I feel there are many, some behind bars, some are being killed, some are in protest today, all over the country. These are people who are not afraid to speak the truth. And to me, that is what he denotes. And that is what, in today's time, when we are becoming more selfish, when we are becoming more fearful, sometimes rightly so, because of the climate of fear that is there in the country and in the world, people are becoming more bigoted. So with all these divisive forces around, I think Manto is important because it invokes that in us. How much do we care about what's happening around us? When partition happened, there were other people. And today, there's so much else happening. We read it in the papers. We feel troubled. We talk about it, in our cafes and in our dinner tables, etc. But our lives aren't changing. We're all in some ways complicit, and we've all kind of desensitized ourselves. And we think that's a defense mechanism. That's always a mechanism almost to live. But he was so deeply impacted, someone who was so prolific. The only time he didn't really write was in the thick of partition, because he was almost silenced by what human beings can do to each other. Some of his great partition stories was after he went to Lahore and he could kind of process it. So I think he invokes that level of sensitivity. And that's why he's so relevant, because he's a flawed man, and he himself says that, he's someone who sort of is attracted to things that are flawed. He doesn't see beauty with all its frills. And therefore, I think the reason why he continues to be so relevant, because our times are becoming dangerously silent. Our times are becoming such that we don't have enough convictions. You know, we don't know what courage can only follow conviction. You can't seek courage for something. You have to have conviction, and the courage will automatically follow. But if you don't have conviction, then you don't even think of courage. So, in such times, we need role models. We need people who, even though, like someone like him, who's really genuinely loved his family, was ready to sort of give up on that, or he didn't even do it consciously. What is that compulsion to just speak the truth? What is that compulsion to show a mirror to society? And I think that is why he continues to be so relevant.
True.
And
Coming
how
back,
do you, sorry, just to say, how do you bring out your Mantoyat is always tough, because each one of us is different. We have to see where is our Mantoyat, and it changes. You know, I remember in 2016, I was trolled so badly that it was new for me. I just joined social media in 2014 before the last elections. And I didn't have such a thick skin. And in social media, sometimes they would put my 5-year-old son's photograph and write all kinds of nasty things. And I sort of withdrew, and I said, I don't think I want to get into all this, you know. So our Mantoyat, our courage, our conviction sometimes does dwindle. But that's why we need those reaffirmations and those reminders. So I think each one will have to decide how much you care about your own Mantoyat and how much you are ready to push it.
true. Coming back to your book, when did the idea strike you that you need to put it down as a book? Your experience of making the film and all the people who probably were on this journey with you.
Yes.
When did the idea strike you, and how did it come about?
I wanted to do a book even after Firak. It never happened. And those stories also sometimes get foggier with time. Then as I was finishing the journey, I took it to festivals, I took it to campuses in various parts of the world as well. And I just felt that there was still a lot that I wanted to share, and it was sort of left unsaid. I thought it would be easier. I thought I'll just compile all the interviews I've done, and I had so many wonderful photographs that were never used. So I thought, okay, I'll just put the photographs. But of course, once you start writing it, there's so much that comes out. And again, you have the same problem, because there'll be people who will know Manto, there'll be people who wouldn't have seen the film, who wouldn't know anything about the film. How do you tell them about the journey? So the book also is, if you've seen the film, I think you will enjoy it because you will know the backstories of a lot of things that you've seen. And if you haven't seen the film, I hope it's going to pique your interest and you say, okay, this sounds like an interesting journey. I want to see what shape did it finally take. But to be able to kind of walk that thin line, it did take some time. And it took me almost a year. I'm not a very disciplined writer. This was my first book anyways, and I'd done only columns. I'd done columns for the week for about 9 years, and I'd written Manto and Firak and another play called Between the Lines. But I don't really have a discipline of writing, so much of the book was written on flights, and after my son would sleep, that was in the quiet and silence of the night, much of it was written. It's not very carefully. I've not really edited it that much. I gave it to my publishers, and I kind of reread it probably only once. But it's very candid. It's a stream of consciousness. I've just shared as candidly as I'm sharing right now, and in all other places.
Yeah, it's a very wonderfully put together book. I haven't read the entire book, but I did go through a few
And there are
chapters,
lots
and
of
it's very heartfelt.
photographs
Yeah, it's
it's
extremely heartfelt, and that's what's really interesting about the book. So I would recommend all of you all to please read the book, because it's got some really wonderful
And I hope
anecdotes.
to bring out also a paperback, because this is priced a bit expensive because it's a difficult
But also
one.
it's a bit cumbersome to carry.
Cumbersome for me to carry it.
So a paperback
But
would be
we
very
would, yeah.
interesting, and definitely I would recommend
But
everyone
there's a
to
good
read it.
discount on Amazon and Flipkart, if I may plug that in.
So, I think I should
can open it to
the
the
house
audiences.
for questions. Whoever has any questions for Nandita, please go ahead. Can someone please pass the hand mics?
You're close enough. I'll repeat your question.
Hi, Nandita. Congratulations for a poignant and a poetic film. I did watch it, and what a fabulous performances by all the actors, especially Rasika Duggal, whom we later discovered in Mirzapur. I was mentioning Ranjan the other day. Anyway, I was just asking you a simple question. Would you consider Manto's literature for the online platforms? I mean, the Netflix or the Amazon? Because I think we didn't have enough in your film. I want more of it.
I hope somebody will make it.
Yeah.
I think
It's better that you make it because you did a fantastic job.
that would be a life's project then.
No,
but I do
maybe a
hope because
few,
I
a
think it's
selection.
totally there. I think there were some stories that were made long ago on
Yes,
Star
yes,
TV or
yes,
something
yes.
they had brought out. But definitely, I think it would make for a very beautiful series
Yes.
if it is made.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Priyankar De. So, ma'am, in an interview where you were telling about that Manto is a very raw figure. And when Manto we find in a classroom, when he's always speaking about that, you need to be progressive a lot. So when you were mentioning about the stream of consciousness, we also find the word that how Manto is mentioning about the James Joyce Ulysses, which is also being threatened in that way when Manto was also being threatened. So when Manto is taking up all the real things in life, so is that the spirit which you have mentioned? Is that the progressive spirit that worked on you so that you bring up with such a subject in such an atmosphere where we will find that people writing about social issues or the things which are about women that are put into the dark side, but actually it is the real fact which should be brought up to the mainstream. So how that progressive spirit influenced you a lot to bring up the Mantoyat spirit in front of everyone?
If you're talking, if I don't know if I've understood your question correctly, but to bring out the reality of society, I think definitely that was something that he did. But he didn't do it in a didactic way. You know, sometimes we think, oh, we have to bring out these social issues, we have to give a big message. Nobody wants to be told. I don't want to be told anything, and I don't want to tell you either. So it's not in that, you may sit down, please. So it's not in that spirit. The idea is to tell very intimate personal stories because it's finally personal stories that move us. When you make it sort of, you know, if I tell you about lots of people, if I talk in generic terms, it kind of becomes a certain theory. But if I tell you about one person, even Partition, he doesn't tell you these big stories about the migration or about the killing, not in large numbers. You know, he talks about very specific stories. And you can sometimes even swap the religion of the characters and nothing would change. He really talks about what people did during that time. How did it impact? What happens in these violent times? How the best of us, you know, have certain foibles, have certain weaknesses, and how the worst of us can be redeemed because they have, you know, a sense of humanity. And it's through these stories, because when you humanize something, when you create the other and then you create and invoke an empathy for that person, that's when we subconsciously we change. Why do films impact us? A 2-hour film, why should it even impact us? There's no way to quantify it or quantitatively measure it. But we know that you and I are what we read, what we watch, the people we meet, everything impacts us and subliminally goes into our subconscious and impacts our responses. And I think he probably believed in that sort of redemptive power of the written word of his stories, and that's why even through the worst of times, he just kept writing. He just kept writing about individual, small, intimate stories, people you could relate to. And I've tried to do the same, both in Firak, which was again after the Gujarat carnage. And if I wanted, I could have made it sort of more political and, you know, sort of made it more generic, and one could do some name calling. But again, it was stories about 5 little stories about 5 relationships that get impacted when even the obvious violence is over, and everything else that lingers on, everything else that violent times throws behind it. So similarly, even in Manto, it's a story about this man, and through this man, also about the times and the people around him. So I think showing reality, we sometimes squirm, we say, oh, we have so much reality, so grim. Why do we even want to watch it? I'd rather watch a fun film. A lot of people say that why do you make these dark films? Like who wants to watch it? But you know, there's nothing dark or light. We don't have to make things so binary. He was a man with a lot of wit, lot of humor, and also reality sometimes is grim. We can't gloss over it. We can't pretend that it doesn't exist.
And I think what was really beautiful about his writing was it's extremely compassionate.
Yes.
It was so compassionate, and it sort of saw the human side to even characters that were flawed. So I think that came through even in your film, and I think that was really
he's
wonderful.
compassionate, and he can also be very ruthless, because you know he feels no need to gloss over things or beautify things or you know present them in more palatable ways, and that's why he was controversial in his times, and people didn't know what to really, you know, where to position him. Even in that time when this positioning and all wasn't there, in some sense there was a kind of an unsaid definition of also what progressive writers ought to be doing, whereas he in many ways was also so ruthless about reality that he didn't feel the need to beautify that. One at the back, maybe. Do you want to point out to them, because she's looking at you to point out?
Hi Nandita.
Hi.
I saw the film, and there's a quote which I want to make. Manto said that ज़माने के जिस दौर से हम गुजर रहे हैं, अगर आप उससे नावाकिफ़ है तो मेरे अफसाने पढ़िए.
जी.
अगर आप उससे बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकते तो ये ज़माना ही नाकाबिले बर्दाश्त है. So I want to ask that the things that are going around in our country right now, the protests regarding the CAA, NRC, and NPR. So what do you think that people should know about the responsibilities? That there's a quote, famous quote about Dante, that the darkest places of hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. So this is what we are going through in our country. This is a kind of moral crisis right now. So what do you want to tell the people of the country who are listening to this right now, that the courage with what Manto had in him during that time about partition?
Yes.
So what do you want to tell the people, a message that they should rise now? Because
I think many people are speaking up, even those who were kind of on the fence and, you know, weren't sure which way really to go, have begun to realize that, you know, this is not the direction where we want our country to go. We do not want to have another partition. We do not want to divide ourselves on the basis of religion yet again. If Manto was here today, he would have definitely said that, you know, have you learnt nothing from history? After 70 years, you still want to make religion the marker to, you know, define yourself? Because when partition happened, Pakistan decided to be an Islamic state. And our leaders very wisely decided that this was going to be a secular democratic state. Our constitution grants equal rights to everybody, irrespective of their religion, their caste, their gender, their sexual preference, their color of their skin, what have you. And yet today, when we have so many other problems plaguing our country, whether it's the economic meltdown, whether it's the unemployment at its height, whether it is the farmers committing suicide, whether it's malnutrition of children, sex ratio dropping, environmental crisis. I mean, there's a long list of things that we should be dealing with, instead of telling people to fill hundreds of forms, find their papers, and prove themselves all over again that we are Indians. And I mean, that I think you don't need to be a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever to be. So I think everybody, I'm sure, is speaking, and those who are on the fence, I'm sure we all are trying to explain it to them and, you know, invoke again that humanity. It's not even, everybody doesn't have to be an activist or be sort of overtly political, because people think political is a bad word. A lot of the times people come to me and say, but you know, I'm not political. I'm apolitical. I really don't know what that means. That means a certain kind of politics that we may disagree with, but it's political nonetheless. So I definitely, these are times not to keep quiet.
yes, ma'am, there is also a quote, Manto, that
Can you please limit it to one question each, so that you know other people
If
get
we
a
have
chance
time,
to
we'll
ask.
come back to you.
Okay,
Come
Yeah.
back to you. Can you here, please? Yeah.
हेलो
जी,
नंदिता, आपको एक ज़बरदस्त अच्छी फिल्म के लिए बधाई.
शुक्रिया.
और
माइक को थोड़ा पास रखेंगे, दूर तक आवाज़
हाँ
नहीं
जी।
आएगी.
मैं सिर्फ ये जानना चाह रहा था कि इस फिल्म को बनाने के दौरान या फिर किताब लिखने के दौरान मंटो के एक बड़े कंटेम्प्रोरी थे उपेंद्र नाथ अस्क, और उनकी एक बड़ी ज़बरदस्त बायोग्राफी है मंटो की, मंटो मेरा दुश्मन। तो क्या आपने इस बायोग्राफी को पढ़ा या इसको रेफ़र किया किताब या फिल्म के दौरान?
मैंने उसके कुछ, सारा तो पूरा नहीं पढ़ा है, लेकिन उसका कुछ हिस्सा पढ़ा है। इसीलिए इसमत चुगताई ने कहा था मंटो मेरा दोस्त मेरा दुश्मन, तो वो दोस्त वाला मैंने ज़्यादा पढ़ा है। लेकिन उपेंद्र नाथ अश्क वो भी एक बहुत अच्छे राइटर थे, उन्होंने स्क्रिप्ट राइटिंग भी फिल्म इंडस्ट्री में आने की कोशिश की थी। मंटो और उनका थोड़ा उनकी नोक-झोंक भी होती रहती थी। पर आजकल जिस तरह के हम झगड़ा सोचते हैं ना कि दो राइटर्स हैं या दो फिल्म मेकर्स हैं तो बिल्कुल अलग हो जाते हैं, उस ज़माने में शायद इस तरह का इतना बाइनरी रिलेशनशिप नहीं था। नोक झोंक भी होती थी, झगड़ा भी होता था, आपस में लिखाई में वो एक दूसरे को कुछ कह भी देते थे और फिर साथ बैठ के दारू भी पीते थे। तो वो ज़माना वैसा था। तो उनके बारे में मैं थोड़ा बहुत जानती हूँ, जितना मैंने पढ़ा है। मैं ये नहीं कहूँगी that I'm एनी एक्सपर्ट ऑन उपेंद्र नाथ अश्क। उनके बेटे शायद अब कुछ निकाल रहे हैं, पूरी एक वॉल्यूम उनकी कहानियों की।
Hi Nandita, it's an amazing movie. Now the thing is this, Sneha Khanwalkar actually did the music for the movie.
She
why
did
don't-
the songs and the wonderful songs.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, that's what I meant. So why don't you give us some inputs on that, how you plan the songs, how you plan the music, because it was wonderful.
So I never thought there would be songs in the film. I didn't start off with that. But I had learnt my lesson. Earlier we talked about the lessons learned from Firak. So Firak didn't have any songs. And at the end, my producer said, but how do we do free play? That's the way you can, put it out on these channels. So you need songs. So I had to record songs after the film was done. And those songs actually were just used for the trailers. And I thought, my God, I better keep that in mind this time. So there is a small scene which is at the Independence Day party where I show Ashok, which is a fiction scene with lots of dialogues that were taken from actual writings, where Ashok Kumar throws a party at the Bombay Talkies. And there, Jaddan Bai, who was Nargis's mother, courtesan turned music director, composer, first female producer, composer, singer, who's also a lesser known character. A film could be made on her as well. So she sings it in the party. So all the poetry that I've taken in the film are from Urdu writing. This was a writer called Simam Akbarabadi. I took his poetry. And this was sung by Shubha Joshi, a classical singer from Mumbai. And Ila Arunji had played the character. That was one song. Then there was another character that I wanted in the film. It was based on a real-life writer called Meera Ji, who I discovered through Manto. He was a great Urdu writer, but I had no idea about him. And Manto has written a biographical sketch. I think it's called Teen Gole, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a wonderfully written biographical sketch about Meera Ji, who was also very Manto-esque, quite a maverick. And because that scene sort of went off in my third, fourth drafts, there were too many subplots happening, I kind of missed Meera Ji. So I took his poetry and put that in the song Nagri Nagri Phira Musafir. That's a song that Shankar Mahadevan sang. And it's a song that comes as a hallucination that Manto has about Shyam singing. So only a few lines are used in the film, but in the album it's there. And then there's a song at the end, in the end credits, which is actually, which came out later. I thought about it, that what do I want the audience to leave with? What is the emotion that I want them to go back with? Is it, usually you think, oh, do you want a hopeful note? Do you want an optimistic or a pessimistic? Again, those binaries. I wanted to really leave the audience with almost a call to action. What are we going to do? What do we take away from Manto? And I thought, what I want to really say is, Bol ke lab azad hai tere, bol zuba ab tak teri hai, which is a Faiz ki nazm hai. It's a very famous nazm, and that kind of captures the essence in many ways of what Manto wanted to say and what I wanted to say through the film. And that's a beautiful song which is sung by Ustad Rashid Khan and Vidya Shah. And Ustad Zakir Hussain did the background score of the film. Some women? Here, maybe, after that.
Okay. Ma'am, you shot a film namely Kannathil Muttamittal in 2002. Now, during the last scene with Baby Kittana, did you feel the deluge of emotions of Manto the subtle and the subtler, or the confrontation within the same person, the character of the terrorist?
Sorry, say that again.
I mean,
So he's talking about a Tamil film I did with Mani Ratnam called Kannathil Muttamittal, which talks about the Sri Lankan Tamils, and I played,
Yes.
they would call freedom fighter, somebody would call a terrorist. But what's the question?
Yes, the question is that all that Manto wrote about was somewhat along the lines that we see in the character. So the confrontation within the same person. Did you feel that Manto, the subtle and the subtler, were all representative within the same person, the character?
It's tough to say. I mean, Manto, the subtle and the subtler, I don't know what you mean, but I mean, I think now people are also seeing so many, because I've been with Manto for 6 years, all my interviews and all my conversations are around that. I have not really connected, to be honest, Kannathil Muttamittal with Manto, but I'm sure they are human stories, they talk about real people, they talk about the struggles. So if you see that connection, that's wonderful. But I don't really have sort of much to say about that. Yeah, here.
Ma'am, Sadat Hassan dies, but Manto lives on. My question is, how did Mantoyat influence your art of filmmaking, and what are you taking away from him?
So her question, if you can't hear, is how does the Mantoyat and influence my art of making the film? I think the fundamental thing about telling personal stories, in his stories also he really focuses on personal stories, and without making them too black and white, exploring the grey areas. And I think that's been my lens as well, in as much as possible. Also, like I said, fact and fiction are very blurred. So even the stories, the way they are interwoven, it's very ambiguous. And those of us who are comfortable with ambiguity don't get rattled by the fact that sometimes you don't know you've entered a story. But there are some who have come to me and said, oh, I didn't realize I'd entered a story. And it's only by the end of the story I realized I was in a story. Like, why didn't you differentiate? Why didn't you give a different color tone? Even filmmaker friends have said, you didn't want to give it a different color tone. And I said, no, I didn't. Because, sometimes fiction can be even more real than a fact. So it doesn't matter whether this can happen. Sometimes fiction can be so powerful that you feel that it is as real as reality. So to me, it didn't matter whether you thought of it as fiction or not, as long as you were moved by the story, as long as you could understand the characters and journey with them. So I think in that sense, those are the bits that I would say are a little bit Manto-esque.
We have time for one more question. So
You take that call.
yeah.
Maybe
Here,
the
here.
lady there?
Oh, yeah,
Good
okay.
afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, I had to ask you, how fluid or how straitjacketed do you think are the concepts of the artist and his art? Like with respect to Manto, I've seen the film and you showed us that, you interlinked his life with his stories, because he was somebody who was true to his writings. His life was, we can say, a representation of his stories. But with respect to other artists, especially in given times, ma'am, what would you say? Can you separate the artist from his art, or do you think that somewhere down the line they merge into one whole unit per se?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Even I've been actually asking myself that, because for me they are quite inseparable. Both in my own work and my life, and in fact that's why the book as well, because the book kind of talks about the journey of the artist, where I'm talking about the art. But that's true. There are musicians, there are writers, there are painters, there are a whole lot of people you get to know about their real life, which was very different. We hear someone's music and, you great musician, and then you hear these horror stories, how they behaved with maybe other musicians, or there was competition and there was all of that. But I don't know. I really don't know. It's an exploration. I also want to go deeper into it, but I can only talk about myself, that I feel that the art and artist in many ways are inseparable.
Or at
Thank
least
you
should
on
be.
that note.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
very much.
everybody. Thank you, Nandita. Thank you for this lovely
And
conversation.
now you have the
All
most
best with the book.
wonderful TM Krishna.
But before the most wonderful TM Krishna, we'd like to thank the most wonderful Nandita. The last question was about the artist and the art. And there's this famous line of Yeats, can we tell the dancer from the dance? So you were talking about looking for many Mantos in today's world. One of my heroes is Nandita, and what she does on screen and beyond is truly worth yet another round of applause. And we have a vote of thanks being offered by Neelam from Red FM. So,
thank you so much. I'm Neelam from 93.5 Red FM, and I'm a big fan of Nandita ji. And let me tell you something, I was stuck in horrible traffic jam, and I lost the opportunity to speak to you, talk to you, sitting right beside you. But thank you so much. And one thing I would also like to mention that I not only watch your movies, but I also follow you on social media. And जो आप सोशल मीडिया पे बोलती हैं और जिस तरह से आप मूवीज़ बनाती हैं, आपको hats off as a woman. And I'm like, you can call me a performer on radio, but yes, आप दिल की बात बोलती हैं जो हम सब शायद सोचते हैं, बट नंदिता वो करके दिखाती हैं अपने फिल्मों के जरिए. Thank you so much, Nandita. Thanks.